As we head into the last remaining weeks of 2020, a year I think we can all agree we'll be thankful to wave goodbye to, well, the more and more I contemplate and process all of the moments I've experienced since the world suddenly started spinning out of control while simultaneously stopping to a halt, I'm beginning to see more and more clearly that there is a common curriculum, so to speak, that we are all being offered during this semester of life. Well, this year, within an instant, went from being the hopeful beginning of a new decade to being the stressful prologue of what seems like a really bad dystopian film. Yet we're still here, wondering things like, what's my life going to look like once this all blows over? Along with the most universal question of them all, when's it all going to end? And to make matters worse, we're starting to see a lot of our systems and structures of perception become challenged, or even worse, completely fall apart. The world is changing fast, and whether or not we trust the sources from which we're getting our information, it can be difficult to fully get a grasp or put our finger on where this is all leading us as a species. But what we know for sure is that we have somehow let ourselves into this great social divide, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. We live in a world where much of what we experience we have no control over, and then there are the parts to life in which we do have control. You see, we as human beings, we possess a plethora of superpowers that we continuously take for granted. One such power is our ability to consciously respond to situations rather than to react to them. We have this evolved layer of critical thinking that, if harnessed correctly, can carry us through conflicts and obstacles with finesse and dignity. So where does this power of response versus reaction connect to this whole division that we're facing? Well, good question, and I'm glad that you ask. Now, if you're like me and you live in the United States and not under a rock, then you're probably starting to get accustomed to this whole us versus them mentality that has been getting stronger and stronger since the start of 2020. So politics and worldly affairs, these are things that meant very little to me up until the start of this year. And as of recently, I've had my fair share of debates and arguments due to the beliefs and values that I carry that have me looking at the world from my side of this divide. But what I'd like to propose is this. What if the line that we've drawn in the sand is much more transparent than we think? There are some serious issues on the line, and the fact that so many people are passionate about it is absolutely beautiful. But what about all the hate and the judgment and the shame that doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon? Well, much like you, I am a person, born in a particular place and time, with a certain set of values and beliefs programmed into me at a young age. Then, along with all that I was conditioned with, based on my life experiences, I've picked up some of my own beliefs and values that have formed the way in which I see the world around me. And the same goes for all of those who we consider enemies, or those whose opinions we despise. But what do we all have in common? Well, the ways in which we see the world. They're not entirely up to us. Therefore, we're kind of screwed from the get-go because it's just going to be impossible not to piss off or offend somebody. So for those of you that don't know him, I'd like to introduce you to a man named Daryl Davis, a man who used the power of conversation to convince a prominent leader of the KKK and many members with him to hang up their robes and walk away from the Klan for good.
Ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things we do not understand. If we do not keep that fear in check, that fear in turn will breed hatred, because we hate those things that frighten us. If we do not keep that hatred in check, that hatred in turn will breed destruction.
And I highly recommend that you go back and watch Daryl's TED Talk from a few years ago to get the full story. I'll pop a link in the description, because this right here is the power that we all share during these divided times. And none of this is to imply that we should simply go back to old times and forget about all the ways in which our society is flawed and all of the problems that are at the root of it. Some say that conflicts are far too complex to be solved by simply being polite or avoiding talking about them, and that is absolutely true. But is the way that we tend to go about our conversations on opposing views always efficient enough? But the two most important responsibilities that we have during these times especially is that we, number one, educate ourselves as much as possible and look into whether or not what we're reading into is fully legitimate. And second, we are fully responsible for the ways in which we carry ourselves. So, for the sake of the future, be gentle with yourself and be gentle with those who disagree with you. Because what is more likely to lead to two people seeing eye to eye? Is it the incessant arguing and both parties pointing their finger at one another? Or is it taking the time to learn about the other person and their beliefs and why they came to the conclusions that they hold? None of us want enemies at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure that most of us want what we think is best for the world. So keep that in mind as we enter this new era.
Disaster strikes me every night, and I keep moving on. Farther away than satellites, and I'm alright. Yeah, I'm on overtime. You're on my mind again. Keep breathing in, keep breathing out.
Real quick, I just wanted to take a second to give a major shout out to my good friend Henry Chadwick for being down to collaborate and letting me use his music for the backing track to this video. He's one of the best musicians and producers that I know, and I'm entirely stoked that he was down to be featured. So down below I'll leave a link to the full version of his music video, Overtime, as well as all of his other social medias for you guys to go check out. So go give him some love. Thanks again, Henry. You rock. Take it easy, guys.